The grass type. It's a type that is looked down upon as being much inferior to the other two basic element types, and some even see it as the worst type in the game. But what are these factors that give the grass type such a bad reputation? And is it possible for the grass type to redeem itself from all the relentless negativity? All I know is that it's not my goat Sceptile that's committing these atrocities. I'm just keeping it real, it's still a top 10 Pokemon of all time. But let's take a closer look at grass, the type Entangled, by the numbers. I'll start by looking at the grass type battle properties to show why it has such an awful reputation. When the grass type initially came out in Kanto, it was super effective against 3 types and able to resist 4 types, which isn't that bad. Until you look at the other side, where it has a total of 5 weaknesses and 6 types that are capable of resisting grass type attacks. When the steel type was introduced in the 2nd generation, it became the 7th type that was able to resist grass type attacks. These battle properties are absolutely tumultuous. This allows the grass type to have 2 awful records. The first one being the most amount of weaknesses by a singular type at 5, which is tied with rock. And the other being the type that gets resisted the most by other types, with 7 types resisting it, being tied with the bug type. Having 2 negative records, of course, makes the grass type the worst type statistically, and it would need to put up a masterclass performance in all other aspects of Pokemon for it to be considered a good type. Spoiler alert, it doesn't. So now, let's take a look at how strong and abundant the grass type Pokemon are as a whole, to see if it can make up for its bad properties. Just know, the following calculation is only considering regular and regional forms, not megas or alternative forms. The grass type had an alright start in Kanto, releasing 14 total Pokemon, 9 of which shared the exact same typing. But regardless of that, the average base stat total amongst these Pokemon was 401, a bit below the average type in Kanto, but good enough. In the next generation of Johto, we see 10 grass type Pokemon, including both the first mythical and the weakest grass type in terms of base stat total ever. These two, alongside the rest of the grass types in this generation, combine to an average base stat total of 399, which is pretty low, but it gets lower in the next generation of Hoenn. This region released a total of 17 grass type Pokemon, with one of them being the greatest grass type of all time, Sceptile. Despite my glorious GOAT valiant efforts, however, the grass type sees its lowest base stat average of all time at 388. Even when looking at just final stage Pokemon, the grass type in the Hoenn region still had the lowest average across all regions at 483. All I know is that these grass types are selling my idol. In the Sinnoh region, we finally start to see relatively strong grass Pokemon. The Sinnoh region released 14 grass types, with one of them being the mythical Shaman. This, alongside some new evolutions, allows the grass type to on average have a base stat total of 438 in Sinnoh, which is the highest seen thus far, and will remain that way for a long time. Anyways, we get on to Unova, which introduced the most amount of grass types seen in a singular generation, at 20. This record is tied with Paldea, and we get introduced to our first legendary grass Pokemon in Virizion. The collective average of these Pokemon ends up at 409. We then get the Kalos, which, due to its overall lack of Pokemon, holds the record of being the region that introduced the fewest amount of grass Pokemon at 9, being the only region to not produce a double-digit amount. Despite that, the grass Pokemon seen in this region were fairly good in terms of stats, with them ending up with an average of 416. And then we get to Alola, which by technicality was very bad for the grass type. They released a total of 13 grass Pokemon, with there being some powerful ones among them, which causes their average base stat to hit 412, which isn't that bad compared to the previous generations of grass types. However, when compared to the Alola region, the grass type finally ranks in the bottom 3 in terms of base stat for any type, being ahead of only the water type. This isn't the only time grass had a bottom 3 average. They also achieved it in the next generation of Galar as well, where the grass type on average had a base stat total of 430, which is tied with the second worst alongside fire, only greater than bug. This really shows the evidence of power creep, as the value of 430 is the second highest value grass has seen so far, and yet it ranks in the bottom 3, while its average in Hoenn was 388, but wasn't a bottom 3 types in terms of average base stat total. Anyways, there were 10 grass Pokemon in this generation, with one of them being Rillaboom, which some consider the best grass Pokemon in terms of competitive play, but more on that later in the video. And finally, we get the Paldea, where the grass type is benefited greatly. They released 20 grass Pokemon, which ties the record of most in a region, but does so with a lower total Pokemon count. This allows the Paldea region to have the highest concentration of grass type Pokemon across all regions, with 1 in every 6 Pokemon from Paldea being affiliated with the grass type. Not only did they release a lot, but most of these Pokemons are pretty strong, where the grass type sees its highest base stat average at 455. Even when looking at just final stage grass Pokemon, it's still the highest at 532. This record is achieved without the inclusion of Ogerpon's 3 forms, by the way, as they are deemed as alternate forms. This puts the average base stat of grass type as a whole at 416. But with the 5 regional forms included as well, the average further increases to 418. This value of 418 causes the grass type to have the 4th lowest base stat average of all types. When looking at just final stage Pokemon, its average score is 506, which removes it from being placed in the absolute bottom ranks. Now of course, with stats like this, it's not going to make up for the type when its properties are already horrendous. But despite these blemishes, we do see that the grass type has been releasing more and more Pokemon per region, as we can see that the percentage of Pokemon affiliated with the grass type has increased from about 9.5% in Generation 1 to about 12.5% of all Pokemon now. With the 5 regional forms included, it makes 132 out of 1080 regular and regional form Pokemon be affiliated with the grass type, making it the 3rd most common type, only behind normal and water. But of course, quantity doesn't equal to quality, and this mix of subpar stats and awful type properties puts grass in a bad position. It does, however, have access to a unique array of moves that allows it to battle in ways no other types can, which may or may not bail it out of this hole. So let's see what the grass type brings to the table in terms of moves. Unlike most types who mainly rely on sheer base power or causing stat changes, the grass type is about causing status effects with powders and restoring health with draining moves. Let's look at powders first. A majority of them are grass type moves, with the 2 most popular powder moves being Rage Powder to redirect attacks and Spore to induce the sleep status at 100% accuracy. The great thing about the grass type is that they themselves are immune to the effects of powder moves, so you would need other ways to impact grass type Pokemon with such effects. Now let's look at draining moves. The grass type is the only type to have multiple draining attacks. In fact, it has one for each category of physical moves, special moves, and status moves. For physical, we see Horn Leech, and for special attack, the most powerful draining move is Giga Drain. Both of these attacks have a base power of 75 with 100 accuracy, and restore health equal to 50% of the damage dealt. Now if you don't care about restoring health at all, and rather focus on damage output, you would go with Leaf Blade for physical attack and Energy Ball for special attack. As for the status move that causes drain, we see Leech Seed, possibly the most famous one out of them all, draining 1/8 of the opposing Pokemon's health each turn, even if the Pokemon who placed the seeds aren't on the field, allowing for health restoration of your other Pokemon. Now despite this type having all these draining attacks, it's hard to see them get used effectively, since it gets resisted by half of the types in the series, thus reducing the health it's able to take, alongside with the fact that it has so many weaknesses, so the restoring power might not be enough to keep them effective in battle. So let's see if the grass type is lucky in its dual typing to get paired up with typing that reduces its flaws, or perhaps it somehow gets worse. This part will be determined by the type combination stated in Wolfie's video about all the types. It was stated that the worst 3 grass type combinations are Grass Bug, Grass Ice, and Grass Psychic. These combinations were seen a total of 8 times amongst final stage dual type grass Pokemon. And let's keep it real, none of these Pokemon even sees the light of day. Just look at the tragic downfall of Celebi, initially being labeled in the Uber tier and falling all the way down to the RU tier, due to the constant release of strong Pokemon that can easily take it down. Now let's see if the grass type gets paired up with any good typing. The top 3 were Grass Poison, Grass Fire, and Grass Steel. These types were seen the same amount of times as the worst 3 combinations. Also, these typings that were stated all allows for the grass type to become better defensively by reducing its total amount of weaknesses, which the type desperately needed. But even though these selected grass Pokemon are finally blessed with good typing, doesn't mean that they actually perform well in battle. It might be tough since the top 10 dual type grass Pokemon in terms of base stat total all contain a quad weakness. This allows grass to hold the record for most consecutive numbers of dual type Pokemon with 4 times weaknesses. The second closest was Bug, with their 8 strongest Pokemon all having a quad weakness. But let's finally look at the impact the grass type makes in the competitive scene of Pokemon. Just know, the data collected for this part is from Peakalytics, and it was extracted on May 24th, 2025. Pokemon's usages could have increased or decreased from when you are watching this video. Let's start as usual with the Uber tier. In terms of usage rate, there exists no grass type whatsoever in the top 50. It's kind of hard to do so when this format is filled with legendaries. Grass has so many weaknesses, and the grass type has yet to get a real behemoth of a Pokemon. I'm talking base stat of 650 plus. The highest ranked grass type in Ubers is a 55th ranked Among Us, who has a usage rate of 1.15%, making it the only grass type to achieve at least a 1% usage rate. And it's only able to get this high because it's trying its best to exploit the other Pokemon with the move Foul Play and Grass Knot, which in simple terms means it does more damage to good Pokemon. But since Grass itself has no good Pokemon except the Goat Sceptile, they get absolutely thrown around in the Uber tier. So let's take it a step lower, the OU format. If these strong legendaries that the grass type themselves doesn't possess are removed, do they finally start to get used? I mean, there does exist one grass type Pokemon in the top 40 for usage rate in OU singles, that being Ogerpon Wellspring form, and this is its most used common moveset in OU. And for those who didn't know or just need a reminder, the move Ivy Cudgel changes typing depending on Ogerpon's mask, meaning in this case, the most used grass Pokemon in OU doesn't even use a stab grass attack. The grass type Pokemon that has its most common attack also being a stab grass move in OU is the 50th rank Rillaboom, who I alluded to before as being one of the best grass type Pokemon in competitive. Unfortunately, his time to shine isn't in the single format. So let's head into the double battle format, a place where grass types are more potent. Looking at the top 40 for usage rate again, but this time for OU doubles, there exists 6 grass type Pokemon, 3 of which are within the top 10 for usage rate, and Rillaboom is leading the pack, being the 5th most used. So what is the reasoning behind this expansion of grass Pokemon? The first is that weaknesses are more likely to be exploited in doubles battles, since you are given up to 8 different attack slots instead of the regular 4. So grass's flaw of large number of weaknesses isn't as noticed as it is in singles battle. The second thing is that supporting moves are much more effective in doubles, which would be Rillaboom's Fake Out, both Ogerpon's Follow Me, Among Us and Sinistra Rage Powder, and Whimsicott Tailwind. All of these moves can only be used in doubles or bring much more value in doubles battles. This utilization of grass types is also seen in the VGC Regulation Set I Showdown, having 5 grass type Pokemon in the top 25 for usage rate, all with the exact same approach of bringing at least one supporting move. But let's look more in depth of the greatest ranked grass Pokemon, the number 3 ranked Rillaboom. What causes this Pokemon with such a flawed type to see even higher usages than that of some powerful legendaries? For one, it's the only accessible Pokemon that has the ability Grassy Surge, an ability that summons grassy terrain, which for the most part has 2 main functions: increase grass type damage, obviously this benefits Rillaboom, and heal all Pokemon at the end of the turn. But this terrain is also useful in gaining terrain control so that Miraidon doesn't decimate your entire roster. Alongside this ability, it's built to be an offensive pivot. Its IVs and EVs are designated towards attack, and it has 4 attacking moves and the Assault Vest item for increased bulk. Its normal moveset is Grassy Glide, which is the grass type move that gains priority if used on a grassy terrain, which of course is accessible by Rillaboom. Wood Hammer, which deals heavy damage when in unison with the grass terrain. U-turn to switch out, and Fake Out to flinch opponent. It also has pretty nice bulk when assisted with a special defense boost by Assault Vest, and the best part of it defensively is that it's mono grass, meaning
it doesn't have a quad weakness.
And one last benefit that it has is that it's one of the best Urshifu Rapid Strike counter, a Pokemon that's seen even more than Rillaboom itself. But what do you guys think? Is there a way for the grass type to overcome all of its blemishes and be seen more than just a supporting type that has a lot of healing powers? Or are there just too many flaws surrounding the typing for it to ever be seen as a viable threat and remain the type entangled by the numbers?